friend and fellow member of the Rules Committee and of the Judiciary Committee, the gentlelady from Arizona, Ms. Lesko.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Cole, for yielding me the time. Madam Speaker, you know, God takes us on journeys in our life. And about 30 years ago, I was married to an abusive ex-husband. And when I finally left him, there were times in my life I had no money and no place to live. And I tell you what, I never dreamed in a million years that I would be standing here today as a congresswoman in the United States House of Representatives. And I tell you what, I never would have believed that I would be standing here talking about impeachment of a president of the United States. I serve on the Judiciary Committee. I also serve on the Rules Committee. I have spent hours and hours and hours reading transcripts, looking at documents, hearing testimony. And I can tell you one thing. I believe this is the most unfair, politically biased, rigged process that I have seen in my entire life. Here are the facts. There is no proof, none, that the president has committed an impeachable offense. Not one of the Democrat witnesses, not one, was able to establish that the president committed bribery, treason, or high crimes and misdemeanors as required in the U.S. Constitution. And as I've said before, the Democrats are really undermining their own argument here, because 17 out of the 24 Democrat members on the Judiciary Committee voted here on this floor to move forward articles of impeachment on July 17th of this year, before the President Trump's call even took place. And 5 out of the 9 Rules Committee members that are Democrats did the same thing. So if your argument is that this phone call is the main reason for this impeachable offense, why did you vote for impeachment, moving impeachment forward before the call even took place? The process has been rigged from the start. Other members have told you. I mean, never in the history of the United States have we had impeachment that's gone through the Intelligence Committee in closed-door hearings, where a member of the Judiciary Committee, myself, wasn't even able to ask one single question of a fact witness. The whole thing's been rigged, been unfair. In the process that you had set forth, you made sure that the president didn't have any right to have his counsel there until judiciary. But by then it was too late. It was too late. Because there was no fact witnesses allowed in judiciary. So I couldn't even ask a question, nor could the president. This is the most partisan impeachment in the history of the United States. Not one Republican voted for it in Judiciary Committee, not one Republican voted for it in Rules, and not one Republican, I don't think, is going to vote for it here today. Madam Speaker, this is a sad day. I believe the Democrats are tearing this country apart. They're tearing families apart. May God continue to bless all of you. May God continue to bless the President of the United States. And may God continue to bless our great nation. And I yield back.
Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, if Republicans want to defend the president's indefensible behavior, they can do so. But I would urge my colleagues to stand up for the Constitution and to stand up for this country and our democracy. At this point, I'd like to yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from California, a distinguished member of the Rules Committee, Mr. DeSagne.
Gentleman is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to take a minute to thank the leadership of the Rules Committee, Mr. McGovern and Mr. Cole, for our civility last night. Although it was a long hearing and we are very much in disagreement, I felt proud to be part of that hearing, and I really want to recognize both the ranking member and the chair. The previous speaker is part of that Rules Committee, and I would just say that the passion that she demonstrated in her comments, I can't say how much I completely disagree with her, which is a statement on the environment we find ourselves in, and I unfortunately agree with some of her comments, but where the responsibility is, I would put at the White House and the President. He is the divisive one. He is not trying to heal our wounds. The reality and urgency of this moment cannot be more consequential to the American democracy. This is not a hypothetical. President Trump violated the law and solicited foreign interference in our election. At the same time, objective experts have overwhelming evidence that Russia interfered in the 2016 election and is actively engaged in undermining the 2020 elections. Our vote today and the Senate's actions on impeachment have very real long-term consequences for American democracy. Where do we go from here if the Senate does not remove him? The President has a pattern of escalating behavior. The day before the special counsel testified to Congress that the Russian government interfered in our election in sweeping and systemic fashion, President Trump made this call. 2 days before that, the President says that Article 2 of the Constitution says that he can do whatever he wants. As Washington warned in his farewell address, foreign interference tampers with domestic factions and misleads public opinion. We must honor the nation that our founders envisioned and impeach this president for violating the law and betraying the American people. I yield back.
Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished member of the Armed Services Committee, former member of the Rules Committee, Mr. Byrne of Alabama.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the rule and the underlying resolution to impeach President Trump. When the framers granted the House the power to impeach, they feared that it would be abused. Today, those fears are realized. In record speed, this majority has assembled hearsay, speculation, and presumptions for the purpose of overturning the 2016 election. We're not here today, days before Christmas, because the majority has assembled a case against President Trump. No, we're here today because the Democrat majority believes getting impeachment done now will provide their vulnerable members time to distance themselves from their vote. But I assure you, Madam Speaker, the American people are watching. Many of my colleagues have, from day one, rejected the people's choice of President Trump. But another president will come along more to the majority's liking. Our actions here today will be remembered and will set the standard. The second article of impeachment seeks to remove President Trump for failure to produce certain requested witnesses and documents. But as the majority knows, every president in history has asserted executive privilege. The House has a legal avenue to challenge the president, the courts. But the majority has skipped this step, showing that this is about impeachment as fast as possible, however possible. Most of my friends on the other side of the aisle had no problem backing President Obama when he stonewalled the House for years to block our quest to find out the truth in the Fast and Furious investigation. That is why I filed an amendment to the resolution rejected by the Rules Committee saying, based upon the Democratic majority standard, they should have written articles of impeachment against President Obama and Eric Holder. I wish my colleagues would think about the standard being set. I predict that they will very soon regret it, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, a distinguished member of the Rules Committee, Ms. Torres.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, the facts are clear. To quote the USA Today editorial board, Trump used your tax dollars to shake down a vulnerable foreign government to interfere in a U.S. election for his personal benefit. The rule of law is what gives our great country its strength. The rule of law is what separates us from third world countries, where dictators reign for decades on end. The rule of law is what makes us the envy of the world, the place that other countries look too, as they grow their own democracies. And it is the rule of law that brings us here today. We never want to see the rule of law deteriorate or rampant corruption take hold. We never want to see the day when future generations flee for refuge in another country, the way that others are seeking refuge in our southern border right now. I urge my colleagues to vote yes. American values and our Constitution are worth fighting for.
Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, distinguished lady from Indiana, Ms. Lewinsky, also distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in direct opposition to this rule and in opposition to the divisive bipartisanship that is on display right now in this House of Representatives. It's no secret that Democrats have wanted to impeach President Trump since day one, regardless of any fact. They knew the result they wanted. They just needed time to figure out how to get there. So they began their impeachment inquiry. Behind closed doors, selective leaks instead of transparency, no due process. Once they'd crafted their perfect narrative, they moved on to public hearings. They hoped the American people wouldn't notice that they failed to uncover one piece of evidence to justify impeachment. They failed to make the case for this drastic action. And yet here we are. For the first time in history, a president is on the brink of being impeached with the votes of one single party. But let's be clear about one thing. This impeachment obsession is not about accountability. It's not about justice. It's not even about the Constitution. It's about pure partisan politics at its worst. And you're watching it right here. And the American people see right through this today. They've seen the rigged process. They've seen the lack of transparency and the complete absence of any supporting evidence. They know that Washington's broken. That's why they sent us here, to fix it. But instead, House Democrats are dividing the country and further shaking the people's trust in this Congress. It's a sham impeachment. It's been carried out at the expense of hardworking Americans who just want us to move forward. Madam Speaker, this charade should go no farther. We should stop wasting time. Focus on what keeps our nation moving forward. Helping workers and families thrive. Protecting the safety and security of our country. I urge my colleagues to vote against the rule so we can get back to work for the American people, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New Mexico, the Assistant Speaker, Mr. Lujan.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, no one came to Congress to impeach a president. We came here to solve the mighty issues that impact the lives of the constituents we pledged to serve. I'm here because too many families in my district still rely on water trucked in from dozens of miles away. I'm here because too many New Mexican children still go to school hungry. I'm here because too many women in New Mexico drive for hours to find a doctor able to care for them. But this moment has found us. We have reached a point in time where our love of country compels action, where our duty to this republic mandates that we do what's right. The president's behavior is so blatantly wrong that ignoring his abuses of power would be abdicating the oath we made to protect this country and uphold our Constitution. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma.